Greetings, greetings, peace and blessings. Peace and blessings to the chat, to all those that may be catching the replay. I appreciate y'all coming through. Um, and we gonna dive right on in. Us to get to know Tom Homan and his intentions for being the border czar a little bit better, right? And I'm gonna put up an overlay because this is a 60-minute, and I don't really want to risk, getting any flags on this. But I thought that definitely some of this commentary and the exchange between the interviewer and Tom Homan was listening worthy. Let's go.
What would be the human and financial cost? We took these questions to one of the people Donald Trump has said would join him if he wins a second term, Tom Homan, who led immigration enforcement during the first Trump administration when thousands of migrant children were separated from their parents at the border.
The story will continue in a moment.
I hear a lot of people say, the talk of a mass deportation is racist. It's threatening to the immigrant community. It's not threatening to the immigrant community. It should be threatening to the illegal immigrant community. But on the heels of historic illegal immigration crisis, that has to be done.
How you doing?
At the Republican National Convention this summer, Tom Homan was the proud pitchman of mass deportation.
I got a message. To the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country, you better start packing now.
Over 3 decades, he worked his way up from border patrolman to acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the agency known as ICE, during the first year and a half of the Trump administration. This election cycle, former President Trump has mentioned mass deportation at nearly every rally.
We will begin the largest deportation operation in the history of our country because we have no choice.
What would the largest deportation in American history look like to you?
Well, let me tell you what's not going to be first. It's not going to be a mass sweep of neighborhoods. It's not going to be building concentration camps. I've read it all. It's ridiculous.
But if mass...
Okay, so I appreciate his clarity and his clarification on that topic, because for sure that is going to be a talking point and a pushback point that the other side is going to ride until the wheels fall off. So I do appreciate that. And she is going to bring up the fact or the question, does that mean that families will be separated? Let's continue.
Deportation is not going to be, as you said, massive sweeps and concentration camps.
There'll be concentrated,
what is it?
There'll be targeted arrest. We'll know who we're going to arrest, where we're most likely to find them based on numerous investigative processes.
Here's our message.
Former President Trump's running mate J.D. Vance said it would be reasonable to deport 1 million people a year. Trump's top immigration advisor Stephen Miller told a conservative audience that deportees would be removed from the country in a massive military air operation.
So you grab illegal immigrants and then you move them to the staging grounds, and that's where the planes are waiting for federal law enforcement to then move those illegals home. You deputize the National Guard to carry out immigration enforcement.
Stephen Miller said that this will involve large-scale raids.
I don't use the term raids, but you're probably talking about worksite enforcement operations, which this administration pretty much stopped.
Workplace enforcement, that's a roundup.
And that's going to be necessary. Worksite enforcement operations, just not about people who's working illegally in the country, and companies that hire them that's going to under.
That is necessary. I mean, her line of questioning, I'm kind of looking at her sideways, but I get it. I understand. Do your thing.
Cut their competition, I had U.S. citizen employees. This is where we find a lot of trafficking cases, women and children who are forced into forced labor to pay off their smuggling fees.
A study by the American Immigration Council found that mass deportation could result in the removal of millions of construction, hospitality, and agriculture workers, reducing the GDP by $1.7 trillion. Can you just limit it to criminals and national security threat, though?
If I'm in charge of this, my priorities are public safety threats and national security threats first.
First implies others follow, though, right?
Absolutely.
So game that out for me. What's the scenario?
It's not okay to enter a country illegally, which is a crime. That's what drives illegal immigration. When there's no consequences, the Biden-Harris administration has proven this. You can...
Period. Listen to this, y'all. So he's saying that coming into this country in itself is a crime, right? He's saying that it's a crime to come into this country illegally. So when it comes to deporting criminals, he's not going to specifically, because first of all, we don't know who's here. We have an idea of the amount of criminals that have priors, but those that don't, that come here and commit crimes, they're not going to have an adequate tally of what their priors or their previous, if they don't have any, or if they didn't occur in this country, or we don't have access to their information from their native land. All of that, there are so many different, possibilities you can look at it from. But what he's saying is that there have been no consequences. It's not their fault. They are going to sound the alarm and blow the whistle and invite more to come in if they can come here and around them they see, like just looking in New York, busting mirrors in storefronts, robbing stores, stealing from stores, and then taking the merchandise and selling it in front of the storefront that they done broke into the day before on tables. Their own merchandise. There's no consequences. These people are able to do what they want, and the ones that do go through the judicial system, their court dates are months and months out, and then there's no consequences or have not been consequences for those that do not show up for the court dates. So the only way that they will be, if they're illegal and if they're undocumented, how are you going to track them down? How are you going to know where their place of residence is? How are you going to be able to locate them in order to hold them responsible? There have not been enough consequences, and it's actually done just the opposite. Is it's shown them such immunity under this administration, in my opinion, that we are at the tune of over 20 million at the very least illegal immigrants in this country.
To the border, turn yourselves in, get released within 24 hours.
So you are carrying out a targeted enforcement operation. Grandma's in the house. She's undocumented. She get arrested too?
It depends.
Which?
Let the judge decide. We're going to remove people that judges already deported.
Homan's suggestion that grandma might face arrest would mark a major shift in policy. Under President Biden, ICE is mostly targeting those deemed national security or public safety threats and people who just crossed the border illegally.
Okay, so my question is to this, hold on, y'all, is if their priority, let me get this right, if Biden in his current administration's priority has been to deport the criminals and the harmful and those that pose a national security risk or a threat, how is that any different from allowing them in here in the first place? I'm just asking. Your policies and your lack of concern about who's coming into this country has got them into this position, and what, for surface work, for appearances purposes, you just, you say that this is what we're doing, but yet and still we have gangs, we have criminal organizations, we have an epidemic of fentanyl being smuggled into this country. And one of the most dangerous forms of their smuggling is through candy, which makes our children super vulnerable to being affected by a drug that if you touch it and enough gets ingested into your skin, it can take you out of here. But you say, for the sake of looking good on the surface or keeping people quiet enough, that criminals and those that pose security threats are our first cause of concern. But yet still, I just find it really ironic. You let them come up in here.
The majority of the 4 million deportations carried out by the Biden administration have occurred at the southern border, where an unprecedented influx of migrants created scenes of chaos, a humanitarian crisis, and one of Vice President Harris's biggest political vulnerabilities. Homan says mass deportation is the solution.
I want to show this real quick.
The majority of the 4 million deportations carried out by the Biden administration have occurred at the southern border, where an unprecedented influx of migrants created scenes of chaos, a humanitarian...
Look at them people. Whew. Okay.
crisis and one of Vice President Harris's biggest political vulnerabilities. Homan says mass deportation is the solution. How many people would be deported?
You can't answer that question.
Why not?
How many officers do I have?
Is there a written plan on this?
Not that I know of.
If there's no memo, if there's no plan, is this fully baked?
We've done it before.
But not a deportation at this scale.
ICE is very good at these operations. This is what they do.
To see what they do, we went to Silver Spring, Maryland, a suburb of Washington, D.C., where earlier this month, ICE agents gathered in a parking lot before dawn.
And ironically, Silver Spring, Maryland is probably a 10 or 15 minute commute to Andrews Air Force Base, right? So and then the base is only about another, 10 minutes, 15 minutes from the Capitol, from the White House, yada, yada, in DC. All of these are very, very close in circumference, which explains why ICE would have such a high presence, physical presence in a place like Silver Spring, Maryland.
It's what ICE does every day and has been doing for many years.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Their task this morning, locate and arrest undocumented immigrants with criminal histories, including assault, robbery, drug and gun convictions,
This morning, our target is going to be...
identified by ICE as a threat to public safety.
Okay, let's roll.
Matt Elliston, director of ICE's Baltimore field office, told us the goal was to catch the first target by surprise.
You've been watching him.
Yeah.
You know his routine.
Yeah, we know his routine. We've been watching him for a couple days.
Wait till he gets up out in front of my vehicle.
Sure enough, a white van soon appeared to pick him up, but they didn't get very far.
Hey, how you doing? What you got in your hands? What did you put down?
The man they arrested was a 24-year-old Guatemalan with an assault conviction who had been ordered deported by a judge 5 years ago.
So this was someone an illegal that had priors, right? They've been watching him for a few days. I assume and interpret that the interviewer is actually making this point in order to put some accent on the fact that this is not an easy process, that the deportation process is it currently the one that's currently in place. When Tom Homan said that ICE is good at what they do, she is rebuttaling that by saying, okay, well, let's look at some real live experiences on the timing, the process, the manpower that's required, the monies that are needed in order to support this type of enforcement. And is it giving some assurance that this is going to work to its completed desired outcome and goal?
The ICE agents discovered that the driver of the van was also in the country illegally. They told us he'd been deported once before.
He has no criminal record. He was picking up his employee to go work. It doesn't make sense to waste a detention bed on someone like that when we have other felons to go out and get today.
A lot of folks might hear you and say, like, hold on, you've got an undocumented immigrant who comes face to face with ICE, who's responsible for deporting folks from this country, and you let him go.
We utilize immigration law to enhance public safety. It's not to just aimlessly arrest anyone we come across, right? We do targeted enforcement in ICE.
It took a team of more than a dozen officers 7 hours to arrest 6 people, and that doesn't include the many hours spent searching.
12 officers, 7 hours to make 6 arrests in Silver Spring, Maryland. As a tag along, the interviewer went on this particular day to follow and observe their entire operation and to report on it. Again, 12 officers, 7 people with 6 arrests. 7 hours with 6 arrests.
For them.
Oh my God.
So how would it even be possible then for ICE to arrest 1 million people in this country if that mass deportation plan were to take effect?
I could say here in Maryland, we would never be able to resource or find that amount of detention, which would be our biggest challenge, right? And just the amount of money that would cost in order to detain everybody, it would be, at the Department of Defense level of financing.
It's insane to think about it at this sort of scale.
Jason Hauser, ICE chief of staff during the first 2 years of the Biden administration,
Go ahead and take it off for me.
says it costs $150 a night to detain people like those we saw arrested. The average stay as they await deportation is 46 days.
Yeah, but they're paying over $300 to hotel owners to house those same illegal immigrants and migrants that are in New York City. So I don't understand the relevance of what you're saying as to how this is 150. That's half. That's half of what it costs to just house them, not to feed them, not to give them any of the other perks that they were offering prior to election time.
One deportation flight can cost $250,000, and that assumes the home country will accept them. Many, like Cuba and Venezuela, rarely do. ICE currently has some 6,000 law enforcement agents. How much manpower would it take to arrest and deport 1 million people?
You're talking 100,000 official officers, police officers, detention officers, support staff, management staff.
Trump advisor Stephen Miller has said staff could come from other government agencies like the DEA.
The idea that you're going to take the FBI or the Marshal Service or the Bureau of Prisons or the Secret Service or FEMA off of their mission sets that protect our communities will not make us safer.
No disrespect, but it didn't make us safer, and it definitely didn't help or assist the victims of Hurricane Helene with $750 loans to those that lost everything. Everything. Generational wealth. $750 loan for those that were approved. There were many denials. So I'm not really understanding how this is your argument, but let's proceed.
Immigration enforcement requires specialized training and language skills that most military and law enforcement officers don't have.
There's this discussion out there that makes it sound like it's just an easy swap.
It is not an easy swap. So what I can tell you from the Immigration and Nationality Act, immigration law is second to the U.S. tax code in complexity.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
Period, right? Maybe they can be deported together. That's we don't know how they got here. We really don't, but they're here. They knew the risk they were taking. A lot of them, I did on my last live stream, absolutely have gone through hell and high water to even get on this soil, becoming victims of cartels, being stamped on their arms so they don't get double dipped and get harassed the entire route because they have had to pull in and rein in all of their resources in order to pay these cartels off so they don't end up unalived, so they can continue their journey, so that their children are not violated, so that their wives are minimally to not being violated. There is an entire process and a risk way before you even get here, just to get here. I don't know what that means about where you came from, but what I do know is that it can't possibly, in the long term or the short term, in my opinion, cost more than it has already cost, and is still costing at the sound of my voice in this live stream. There are people pouring into this country as a last-ditch effort to not be deported or to be able to get in through the current administration and take their chances once they get here. Now, I'm going to show my last clip, and then we're going to wrap this thing up, right? But I thought this was interesting, and we'll discuss it after I show it.
The biometric entry-exit visa tracking system, which we need desperately. We will ensure that this system is in place. And I will tell you, it will be on land, it will be on sea, it will be in air. We will have a proper tracking system. We will finally complete the biometric entry-exit visa tracking system, which we need desperately. We will ensure that this system is in place. And I will tell you, it will be on land, it will be on sea, it will be in air. We will have a proper tracking system.
So the plan is to implement and to implement an entire biometric tracking system, right? So it doesn't require all of the manpower and all of the scouting, all of the rounding up, and then going through another whole process in order to identify these people. Now, I don't know anything about that to the point where I can elaborate on it further, but just the term biometric tracking system in itself seems like once it is implemented, tested, and hopefully there is a success rate, that it will definitely alleviate a lot of the manpower and a lot of the time that is required currently in order to round up illegals during this plan of deporting people on a mass scale back to their countries. Now, my position on all of this is this. I believe, and I have always, to the point where a large part of my content has been focusing on this immigration issue, because it just doesn't affect some of us. It touches every last one of us, even if we are unaware of it. The problems that we are feeling the effects of it currently, are we considering the long-term effects? So even if this all went away in the next year, you think there wouldn't be long-term effects economically? You don't think that there would be long-term effects as far as crime, the court system being super saturated, definitely exposing further flaws in our system, in our federal system, in our laws, that if people that are paying attention would be able to identify in actually attempting to circumvent, right? There is an issue with people coming over here from other countries and you having those countries saying, we appreciate you taking them basically, but they can't come back here. They're too problematic. They cost too much. They're taking up our resources in our prison systems. They're doing things over here that's costing this country the ability to be able to thrive and prosper. They're your problem now. And we have had an administration in place that has ignored to the public and the outcries of the public and popular opinion that this is not in our benefit as a country, as citizens. And we already have a drug problem. We have a mental health issue in this country. And these people are bringing in drugs. They are exercising the biggest market that we are aware of at this point, and that is human trafficking, which is even more profitable than drugs, than the drug epidemic. The trajectory that this country has been going in just in a mere 4 years has been alarming. And the disingenuous actions that this administration it's been in our faces. This perspective right here is how many people feel. I am paying and have been paying for my children's lives to be in danger. Again, we don't have a say-so. We find out after the fact where our money's going. I know you can draw your own conclusions, do your own ideologies mentally and psychologically, draw your own, conclusions, your outcomes, and have your own feelings, right? And I appreciate all of y'all. Thank you for being here. Much love. And I'll see y'all in the next chat. Peace.